Hello, everybody. Welcome to Picks or Players, a Dynasty Fantasy Football podcast with some betting, hosted by me, Chris Lewis. And today, we're going to be going over the NFL trade deadline, some recent trades I've made in some leagues, plus some, buys and sells, just like I did last week. But to start off, let's just go over the trade deadline since it was today and talk about some of the moves that were made in the concluding hours of it. One deal in particular was Khalil Herbert being sent away from the Bears to the Cincinnati Bengals. Zach Moss, unfortunately, had a possibly season-ending neck injury, so the Bears, so the Bengals needed some running back depth, with that happening, even though Chase Brown has really emerged as the lead back in that offense. Herbert has had some fantasy value in the past, though. He can be a decent runner at times, but clearly he was behind DeAndre Swift and Roschon Johnson. So this trade definitely was not unexpected by any means. The Bears had been shopping Khalil Herbert for a very long time. In terms of a dynasty perspective, I think this definitely will add some value to Herbert in the short term. And if there's an injury to Chase Brown, Khalil Herbert will probably emerge as as a low-key add option or start option for teams. He definitely should still be rostered. If you can pick him up off waivers, I definitely would do that. But in terms of investing any draft capital in him, that's not something I would really do. He hasn't really done anything this season, but at times he's been a very productive fantasy asset. So, if you have him on your team and you can sell him for like a third or a couple fourths, that would probably be worth it because he's not going to hold very much value much longer, given where his status is among running backs and his age. Definitely don't expect him to be a starter in the future when he becomes a free agent. So there's definitely an opportunity now to at least get something for Khalil Herbert. I would look around and see what teams are willing to give up. Otherwise, just hold him on your roster, especially if you're contending. He could be a useful piece down the stretch of the season in case there's an injury to Chase Brown. He probably will have a little bit of a role now that Zach Moss is out, but I doubt it will really be fantasy relevant. Chase Brown has been excellent as the lead back for fantasy. Beyond that, there were a couple other trades. The Cowboys traded for Jonathan Mingo, and they gave up a fourth-round pick, which was kind of crazy to me, because Mingo has really done nothing with the Panthers this year. He was a starter to begin the season, but has been completely phased out of the offense in favor of guys like Xavier Legette and Jalen Coker. It totally seems like that the Panthers kind of lucked out with this move. They got more for Mingo than they got for Deontay Johnson. Obviously, Deontay Johnson is going to be a free agent at the end of the season, and Mingo still has the rest of this season plus 2 more years on his rookie contract. But he's really shown nothing at the NFL level to be really a producer or a fantasy reliable player. He's shown some flashes at times of commanding some type of target share, but overall, though, he has not been a very good player for the Panthers. So to see him get that much trade capital in a trade, or draft capital in a trade is, very unusual for me. And I don't think it's really a sign that the Cowboys are really going to immediately implement him in their offense. But, I guess it remains to be seen. If you have any shares of Mingo, I guess you can hold. if somebody's going to give you some draft capital for him, I would take it because to me, he seems like a jag, just a guy. And I really wouldn't expect him to do anything in Dallas, especially now that Dak Prescott is out for the next 4 to 5 weeks. The Cowboys just placed him on injured reserve, I should say. Not the RAP group. Dak Prescott did not just become a part of injured reserve, the RAP group. But yeah, he's on injured reserve. But yeah, no, the Dallas Cowboys are a dumpster fire right now. I really wouldn't want to do anything with that offense outside of CeeDee Lamb and Rico Dowdle and Jake Ferguson. I mean, those are really the only guys that are even remotely startable, and their production's going to be decreased by a lot with Cooper Rush becoming the starting quarterback. But yeah, no, it's not really an impactful trade for Dynasty either. And then finally, we got Mike Williams going from the Jets to the Steelers. This is more of an interesting trade. You know, Mike Williams used to be a beloved fantasy player on the Chargers, especially as a deep threat. He definitely had some explosive games for fantasy, but he's looked like he's on the sour end of his career, given some injuries that he's had and overall just kind of poor play with the Jets this season. I'm really not sure where he stands moving forward. He seems like a player that could do well in this offense with Russell Wilson under center. But I don't know. I still am a little skeptical of his overall talent at this point, given his age and injury history. You know, maybe he has some chemistry with Russell Wilson there, but this seems sort of kind of like the Steelers struck out on getting Cooper Kupp. They struck out probably on getting DK Metcalf. They struck out on getting Amari Cooper. Any wide receivers that they really thought was an impact player, they really could not get. And yeah, no, I mean, I don't see Mike Williams really bouncing back in a major way. But so if you can get anything for him among like a 3rd round pick, I wouldn't sell him for a couple 4ths. I think he's probably worth more than that, especially since he will be a starter in Pittsburgh. But yeah, no, I mean, if I could get a 3rd for this season or 2026, I'm definitely taking that for him in a dynasty league. If anyone really truly believes that he has something left in the tank, he's just going to be very replaceable from a value standpoint moving forward. Unless he has a killer end of the rest of the season, I really don't see him getting a major deal from any team when he's a free agent again this offseason. There are just way too many younger and cheaper options available than what something he would command. And I think we've seen this from aging wide receivers at this point. You know, it's like once they have kind of lost their moment in the sun, it's hard for them to get it back. And yeah, I mean, this is really Mike Williams' last chance to really retain dynasty value moving forward. So I would look to sell him if you could get a 3rd or even more. You know, if he has a good game, I would entertain that right away. But yeah, that was the NFL trade deadline. I really don't think that there was too much going on from a dynasty perspective. I started this podcast 15 minutes after the conclusion of the trade deadline, so if I missed anything, I'm really sorry. But you know, I don't know. It's not like Josh Allen just got traded to the Panthers or anything like that. So nothing crazy is really going on this year in the NFL trade deadline. The bigger deals kind of happen approaching this week with Deontay and DeAndre Hopkins moving teams and Devontae Adams moving to the Jets. Those moves happened weeks ago. There were some defensive trades that were a bigger deal, but this is a Dynasty Fantasy Football podcast. I'm not talking about IDP, so yeah. Sorry for those listeners who wanted to hear about that. But yeah, moving on. Let's just talk about some trades I made over the past week. There's some good ones. One kind of small one. But yeah, the first trade I made was I acquired Trey Benson, Calvin Ridley, and a 25 fourth round pick that should be projected early for a 2025 second, a 2027 third, and a 2025 third. The 2025 picks should be projected mid to early, but more likely mid, like 205, 206. And this was a trade that, I really only wanted to make if I got Trey Benson. I still believe in Trey Benson as a prospect, and I thought this was a good buy low opportunity for him. And I was willing to give up a second for him because, I do think that there is a decent chance that he does claim the lead back role moving forward if James Conner does leave Arizona. Conner has been an excellent running back for the Arizona Cardinals, but he is aging. And where they're at as a team, I think they would want to invest that money in other places. Benson has looked good in a limited role, and I think the Cardinals have been smart to kind of give him a year to get adjusted to the NFL and really learn that system before they kind of get rid of Conner. Like I said before, he's been very good for fantasy and serviceable for the Cardinals ever since he's been there. Definitely one of the more underrated running back signings of the past few years. I don't think anybody really expected him to really show out in this way when he left Pittsburgh. But Conner has just been an excellent player and has shown how good that system can be for running back for fantasy. And so I still am high on Benson. I haven't really lowered him that much at all because of his kind of redshirt year. I think some people would be concerned, but at the end of the day, like I think we've seen with like guys like A-Chain this season, teams are much more willing to give that younger running back a bigger workload after their rookie season. Granted, A-Chain had some amazing games where they couldn't keep him off the field last year. But Mostert still had an excellent season. And as we've seen with this year with Mostert, he really hasn't done much. He hasn't been very startable for fantasy after having an insane season last year. But yeah, no, I mean, Mostert is a great player in his own right. And I just think those kind of situations might be a little bit similar. Obviously, Miami's an extreme example of success there, but I think this could be a similar situation in terms of just the older back passing down the torch to the younger back in his second season. And then Ridley, since DeAndre Hopkins is now on the Kansas City, I think mainly the guy that I was trading with thought that I was giving the second for Ridley. But I really wasn't. I mean, I was willing to give 2/3 up for Ridley. I don't think Ridley is worth the 2025 second currently. So I wanted to get a younger piece there so I could at least retain some value over the offseason. Don't expect Benson to really have like a major injury towards the end of the season, given how much he's really playing. He's not really playing that much at all. Which is my only concern about Benson. That's the biggest amount of risk there. But I think people in Dynasty know that they're just kind of easing him in. And when he has gotten touches, he's been pretty efficient and impressive. So, yeah, that was really mainly it. This is a team I'm contending with. I needed some depth at wide receiver and just continue to hold some value at running back. I just think this is a good buy low opportunity for Benson. And I'm glad I got that deal done. So yeah, here's hoping to do a big year for Benson next year, and hopefully Ridley can continue to be solid with the Titans moving forward. After that, the other big trade I made was I acquired Garrett Wilson and Michael Pittman Jr. for a 2025 first, a 2025 second, and a 2026 second. Yeah. No, um, oh, did I say Michael Pittman Jr.? Yeah, it's just Michael Pittman. I don't think there's a junior in there. I'm sorry about that. Um, yeah, and I was thinking about Marvin Harrison for some reason. I don't know why I just said that. That was really weird. But yeah, no, I gave up a first and 2 seconds basically for Garrett Wilson and Michael Pittman, and this was before the Thursday night game. So I was so hyped about this deal. It was on a team I'm really looking to contend with, and I've had a really hard schedule to start the season, and I lost the game after the Thursday night game. I thought I was for sure going to win. So it's a little iffy for me to make the playoffs now, but we'll see. I think I play a lot of really weak teams to end the season, but regardless, I think giving up a pick like that for Wilson was fair, especially if I do make the playoffs with this team. It's a very good team. I just have had some injury troubles, with guys like Puka and such. But but yeah, no, I still think Garrett Wilson is an absolute stud for Dynasty. I think he's very undervalued right now too, just because of the situation and some other players really playing well. But I mean, Garrett Wilson has been a top five receiver this year in terms of total scoring. Where let me check where he ranks in terms of fantasy points per game right now. Um, he's got to be up there, especially with his last few weeks. Uh, so let's see. Yeah, Nico Collins is number one. Justin Jefferson number two. Tied with Chris Godwin. Cooper Kupp at number four. Chase at number five. CeeDee Lamb at number six. Neighbors at number seven. And Garrett Wilson's number 8. 17.4 points per game. So yeah, he's definitely a top 12 wide receiver. There are guys ranked ahead of him like Drake London. I mean, obviously Drake London's having a good season, but he hasn't really been as productive as Garrett Wilson. So I don't really understand the kind of community switch there. I mean, Garrett Wilson should be ranked way higher given where he's been producing. I mean, it just kind of seems a little crazy to me that he's finally having a good season and people are kind of out on him for some very extraneous reasons. I understand. I mean, he's had some frustrating games, but overall, I think that's not really a reflection of him. More, just kind of the variability of the wide receiver position. And he still has been a top tier target this year, no matter what. I mean, he leads the NFL in targets by 10. So, I mean, if they've had 3 games with Devontae Adams, and I mean, it doesn't seem like Garrett Wilson's getting any less production moving forward. I just don't think that's going to happen. I mean, he's been so good the past few weeks, even with Devontae Adams' arrival. So I think any of the the complaints that people have about Garrett Wilson are very unwarranted. He's still an elite wide receiver in terms of target share and usage rate. So, I mean, let's just kind of put that to bed. Continue to buy Garrett Wilson. That's all I got to say. And Michael Pittman, let's not forget about him. He's been very disappointing this year after having a great season last year. And to be honest, I was willing to give up a first and a second for Garrett Wilson. And then I added the second there to get Michael Pittman because I was like, why not? Pittman was a player I was willing to buy pretty heavily in the offseason. And it just has kind of seemed like people are just very out on him, given the quarterback situation in Indianapolis. But I think we'll get better. And, obviously Josh Downs has emerged as well, and he's been very solid. But, I still believe in Michael Pittman. I think he will bounce back eventually. He's a talented player. But yeah, moving beyond that, I had one last trade. And that is I sent away Joe Flacco for 2/4. Yeah, nothing really much to say here other than that. This was a rebuilding team. Glad I got something for Flacco before this past week. I think it's unfortunate that the Colts didn't really perform with Flacco this past week. I did think that it would be better given how Flacco played the first couple games he started with the Colts. But to be honest with you, I do feel like eventually they're going to go back to Anthony Richardson. Yeah, might as well. Let's just go into talking about that. I wanted to talk about Richardson in my buys and sells segment. He's definitely an interesting topic right now. I think him and Justin Fields are interesting buys for a couple of reasons. For one, I think Richardson, for as bad as he's been this year, he still has potential, and the Colts, I think, are invested in him. I just think it's the nature of the NFL is that you have to establish a winning culture, and if that doesn't exist, then it's going to be really tough to keep the locker room together and really believe in each other. And I think with Richardson, what he displayed on the field against the Texans of pulling himself out of the game, this was mainly a punishment for that. I don't think it really had very much to do for his play. I think he could have continued to have a really bad game that game, and they wouldn't have benched him. Honestly, I do. So I think Richardson is a buy, mainly because I think he's going to get another opportunity, whether it be this week, next week, or the beginning of next year. He's still a long-term asset. They invested a ton of draft capital into him. I just don't think it's going to happen yet. The giving up point, I should say. They're not going to give up on him just yet. And then Justin Fields, I wanted to talk about him as a buy too, because I think, and this isn't to say that I think he's going to take over the job again in Pittsburgh. I actually don't. I think Russell Wilson's playing really well right now, and he's the best option for that team. But Fields did play well in the earlier stretch of the season, and I think that is enough to tell people that maybe I think a coach will give him a chance next offseason as a bridge option or competition option for another young QB. I think it's just he has so much time left in his career still, and like we've seen with some of these other comeback stories at quarterback, he does have enough talent to at least lead an NFL offense to winning some games if the situation is right. Now, I think the Steelers wanted to move on from him because Russell just provides that much more upside in the passing game, and they really had nothing going on there. But I think everybody can acknowledge that Fields did play well to a degree in those games. So I think guys like Richardson, guys like Fields that maybe people have just sort of given up on, I would just see what you can get for them, if you're rebuilding or not, because it's very rare to be able to find startable quarterback options for a cheap price. And if you think you could get, a potential long-term QB for a second, that's a great trade. I think these are guys that, people have very much soured on. But if you can get them for something very cheap, I would do it. I'm not saying give up a first or anything, but if you can trade them away, if you can get them away, if you can get one of them for a second or something, it's very much worth that. Like a second and a fourth or whatever, second and just a random player. I would do it just because I think teams, dynasty players, are quick to react when it comes to quarterbacks failing. And yeah, no, I think that is something that I would definitely look into if you have some managers that are just sort of sick of those guys and they're not really doing anything for them. My first sell I want to talk about kind of contradicts something that I said last week about rookies. I am very much into buying rookies right now, especially if they have dropped in value. But there's one rookie in particular that I cannot encourage people to buy at this price. And it's quarterback Bo Nix, who is currently QB 16 on Keep Trade Cut. Yeah. No, I don't know why he has increased in value this much. I think it's purely because of fantasy. Yes, he's had some good fantasy games, but his passing efficiency has been atrocious. You look at a guy like Anthony Richardson. Now he was averaging negative 0.8 EPA per negative 0.08. I'm sorry, EPA per dropback. Negative 0.8 would be like the worst in the league, but negative 0.08 is not. But yeah, that's what Anthony Richardson's averaging right now on EPA per dropback, and it's the same that Bo Nix is averaging this season, which is in the bottom half of the NFL. It's right up there with guys like Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, some of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL this year. Andy Dalton. Like, Bo Nix has not been good. And granted, yes, he is a young quarterback that the Denver Broncos are going to be invested in. But I just don't I don't see him getting that much better this right now to justify this price. He is not a top 16 quarterback in the NFL or for fantasy moving forward, in my opinion. The situation is not good. They're up against the cap, and it's going to take some time to be able to really build a good team in Denver. They're well coached. They're ouncing like every little bit of effort from this team. But as you saw against the Ravens this past week, they are far away, very far away from doing anything with this roster competitively. And Bo Nix didn't need, the one touchdown that they had in this game was one that he caught from Cortland Sutton. Outside of that, their offense was terrible. And if you look at him, if you watch the games, he's constantly overthrowing guys. His accuracy has just been abysmal. And it's hard to watch at times. It's like they have to dumb down the offense so much for him. It could get better. I could be wrong. But at this price, it's just not worth it. You can get the same, if not better, QB production plus another piece, for Bo Nix. Like, you could trade Bo Nix for Tua plus another piece. Now, granted, Tua has some injury concerns, obviously, and there's some risk there. But if you're going to get Tua Tagovailoa and another piece for Bo Nix, or you could trade Bo Nix for Dak Prescott plus another piece, why would you not do that? Because the ceiling that you have of a guy like Bo Nix right now is so limited. He has to show rushing upside. He has to show all these little things that have nothing to do with his passing ability, which we've seen this year has been bottom tier in the league. Now, granted, if this was Bryce Young, Bryce Young has very limited rushing upside and overall, which so he's not a great fantasy quarterback unless he's an efficient passer. That's all I see with Bo Nix is just his ability to run a little bit, and just the fact that that they've dumbed down this offense a little bit to mask his inefficiencies. But he's not a big playmaker. He's 30th in the NFL in PFF grade. Let me double check that right now. But yeah, his PFF grade is a drum roll It is rolling. And my page is not loading right now. Let me refresh. Drum roll again, please. Okay, there we go. Yeah, he's actually 31st in the NFL in QB grade with a 66.5, which is not good at all. I don't understand what people see in this guy. He has been terrible so far this year. I'm totally selling at that price. If you can get a Dak Prescott, if you can get a Tua, any QB that you think has some long-term viability, for Bo Nix plus another player, I'm doing it. I mean, even Trevor Lawrence. I'd rather have Trevor Lawrence than Bo Nix. I would rather have Sam Darnold than Bo Nix. I mean, you can. I would rather have Geno Smith than Bo Nix. It's like these guys are QBs that should be remaining in the NFL for at least a few more years. And I mean, Nix, as we've seen with some rookies recently, it wouldn't shock me at all if next year, moving forward, that they brought in some competition at quarterback. It really wouldn't, because I don't think he has been good enough to deserve this grade or deserve this ranking for Dynasty. I don't think he's a top 50 asset by any means. So I would 100% sell him if you can right now. But yeah, no, that's my rant about Bo Nix. The other buy I would want to recommend, kind of ties into that, is Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott just got put on IR. Obviously, the Cowboys situation isn't great. You can pretty much kiss this season goodbye. But it will probably get better. They'll be desperate to make some moves next year. Dak just signed a long-term deal. He's committed there. I really don't see them moving on from him anytime soon. Granted, he hasn't really been spectacular this year, but he's Dak Prescott, and the Cowboys have had some great offenses in the past. They play in an indoor stadium. The conditions should favor him in the future. This is a great buy low point for a QB that you can easily slot into your starting position and feel comfortable. That's how he's going to hold dynasty value for a few more years. I really like Dak Prescott as a buy. He was one of the top quarterbacks last year in EPA per dropback. He had an excellent season. This year, obviously, has not been the same, but the conditions in Dallas are not very good. He doesn't have as many weapons as he used to. The running game has been awful at times. It just really hasn't been a great offensive situation for Dak this year, which I think has led to a little bit of a drop-off in production. But I still am high on Dak Prescott overall. I think you can get him at a great price right now, and I definitely would do it. It's very rare that you can get a QB like that at such a decreased price. But yeah, that's how I feel about Dak. I definitely think he's a good buy low right now. My last sell is kind of a funny one, because he's been playing really well recently. But if you can get a second for Cedric Tillman, I'm probably doing it. This is a guy that really hasn't shown too much throughout his career. He's having some good production right now because of Jameis Winston and their relationship on the field. But I think Jerry Jeudy is probably the better talent in this offense moving forward. And I think, both of those guys, if they were to acquire another wide receiver in the offseason, I think Jeudy would be the more favorable player in terms of snaps than Cedric Tillman in 2025 and beyond. I think Tillman will have a lot of value for the rest of the season. So maybe you want to hold off on this move till the offseason to see what happens if he continues to play really well. But Tillman is a guy that I'm definitely thinking about moving if you can get it. I think a lot of people kind of checked out on him until a couple weeks ago. So I doubt you could really make this trade with a lot of teams. But if you can wait till the offseason, I think that's the best move. But yeah, so Tillman isn't really, I wouldn't say a sell right now. If I got it on offer for a second, I probably would take it. and just worry about the rest later. But overall, though, I mean, I think he's going to still be productive until the end of the year. But beyond that, I really have no idea, because the Browns situation is such a question mark everywhere. But I do favor Jeudy over him in terms of talent and just overall situational upside. They gave Jeudy a big extension. That's definitely going to play into his future role. But yeah, no, Tillman, I like what I've seen so far. If the Browns do have some flexibility, I think they will add another receiver. But it's like that is such a weird situation right now. I'm not exactly sure. So maybe this is a guy you want to wait till the offseason to sell. But yeah, that's the podcast basically. Yeah, buys and sells. Yeah, look into those QBs. Look into Richardson, look into Fields, see if you can get them for cheap. See if you can get Dak for cheap. In terms of pricing for Dak, I forgot to really say that. What would I give up for Dak right now? I mean, it really depends. I mean, if KTC values don't always reflect how dynasty players value their QBs, especially in Superflex leagues, because the importance of the quarterback position is that much higher. But if would I give up a first for Dak? Probably not unless I was getting something more in return. But I mean, that's a place to start. If you have a first round pick in the off season or sometime right now, and like a late first, and you can trade that for Dak and get like a third or another player added on, for minimal additions, if necessary, then I would do it, because I mean, Dak is gonna be back and he's gonna be starting, and the Cowboys probably will get better next year. So I feel like he is a good buy low, even with the injury. But yeah, those buys, those QBs, sell Bo Nix, and kind of speculatively sell Cedric Tillman if you have him. Otherwise, just wait till the offseason. See what the most you can get for him, because he definitely is ascending. But yeah, that's the podcast. Thank you all for listening, and have a good rest of your day.